First of all, let's speak to Keith Porteous Wood from the National Secular Society. Hi, Keith. Hello. And Issam Ikinawi from the BBC's Arabic service. I mean, do you accept, Keith, that because of its scale, the Catholic Church does have a right to influence most societies in the world?
Well, it's going to do its utmost to do that. But what I think is very important is that it's not given a privileged input into that. And it's extraordinary that something like 9 out of 10 Catholics in the West don't actually agree with the hardline Vatican positions on sensitive social issues. So what I'm looking for is very much less influence than there has been in the past in these areas to try and force this doctrine over people who aren't Catholic by law or through the United Nations, often by putting pressure on Catholics who are in positions of influence to do the Vatican's bidding rather than what they're paid to do or what's in the best interests of their voters.
But the doctrine you're describing is actually what defines the Catholic Church. If it were to change too much, it would stop being the Catholic Church.
Well, I think the problem is that they are imposing this extraordinarily unpopular doctrine on issues like contraception, homosexuality, abortion, even when people are the mother's going to die. It's kind of those, or the subject of enemy rape. It is something that most people actually don't go along with. The Church is losing a huge amount of ground on gay marriage. That's happened in Argentina, despite the Pope and his former role. And they are really up against it. I think they're out of touch, even with their own people. And
let's bring you in, Issam, because I was speaking with colleagues of yours at BBC Arabic the other day in the World's Newsroom, and they were saying that speech that Pope Benedict gave in 2006, where he equated the beliefs of Muhammad with violence, did an awful lot of damage. Do you think that Muslims are still open to Pope Francis rebuilding those bridges?
Yes, I think so far the impression that this Pope Francis, because of his Jesuit background, he's more moderate in his attitude to Islam. So there is more optimism that this Pope would be more or less confrontational, and he would probably be more willing to go with a dialogue between the faiths. So yes, there's this impression. I think the previous Pope was seen as a hardliner, as a confrontational figure, and I think that's in a way worked against him.
Well, listen, let's bring in John, who's still with us from St. Peter's Square. And John, you probably spent more time there than you have done in the Global Studio over the last month. I'm just interested to know what impact that commitment to being evangelical from Pope Francis has had. He's told Catholics we have to go beyond our own and spread the word of our faith. But are they confident that the rest of the world wants to listen?
Well, I think there's a sort of sense of euphoria among the Catholic Church at the moment, because I think that they see in Pope Francis as a very easy communicator, someone who can get his message across very simple, very humble, very straightforward, a good sense of humour, and after 7.5 years of appalling headlines for the Catholic Church, expect that maybe Pope Francis can do something different. And, you know, just another kind of bit about the name Pope Francis, which is interesting. If you go back to the 13th century when Francis of Assisi was around, very striking that he wasn't part of the Crusades and that he went to the battlefields and didn't fight and spoke to the sultans and went in peace. And there are many people in the Catholic Church who are saying, look, the choice of the name Francis is interesting. This is someone who wants to reach out to other faiths and create a better interfaith dialogue with those people. And so, you know, it has been an extraordinary 4 weeks. You cannot cover the Catholic Church without it being a great story because of all the symbols, the white smoke, the declaration that we have a Pope, and all the rest of it. But it is also a church that is still kind of recognising that it has to recover its position in the world with all those people that are staying away from going to Sunday prayers or whatever, Mass, whatever it happens to be, and reach out to new people as well.
John, thank you very much. And Keith and Issam, if the message is let's help the poor, let's help the needy, even though Muslims and non-believers in their different ways don't have the same perspective on life as Catholics. Presumably, you don't resist that idea of the Catholic Church.
Of course not, if that's what it is. I mean, there's a lot of newspaper coverage that isn't actually what he did do in South America. But if we want to check, there's a wonderful opportunity to change from Benedict now on with these bad headlines, particularly on child abuse. The church really didn't do anything other than damage limitation under his reign.
But if it were to respond to those abuse allegations in a satisfactory way, in your view,
and openness,
and it looked to help the poor, would you welcome the Catholic Church into British society? You would. And do you think Muslims would see a constructive role for Catholicism in their societies?
Well, I think there are many similar issues between in terms of the teachings of the faith. They're quite similar in things like helping the poor, justice, issues like that. So I think, you know, people look for things in common with the Catholic Church. And there's one interesting point about this current Pope. People are enthusiastic. I'm talking about the Middle East. The fact that he's not a European, he comes from a third world country, so to speak. So people think that he's probably more sympathetic to issues relating to third world countries.
Keith, thank you very much indeed. And